So welcome to this virtual conference on AMP8 and sustainability in the water sector. My name's Will Glover. I'm a consultant researcher for Action Sustainability, who are the delivery partner for the Supply Chain Sustainability School. And I'm joined by my colleague Anna Campwell here. So we're going to be taking you through the session today. We won't be doing too much talking. We're going to sort of hand that over to our panel of speakers who all have different presentations to share. But first off, we've just got some housekeeping to go through. So we will be having a Menti poll for you to get involved in. There'll be some questions that you can answer there. That'll be coming up shortly. The slides will be recorded, or sorry, the session will be recorded and the slides will be shared after the session. So if there's anything you see that is of interest, we'll be sharing that all with you after the session. We have turned off at the bottom of the screen. You can see the chat option won't be available, but there is the Q&A function. So if at all during the session you have any questions or anything like that, please put them into the Q&A and we'll get back to them. We've got a slot at the end for Q&A, so there'll be time for questions and things like that at the end of the session. So this is our agenda for today. We've got our introductions to start with, and then we've got speakers from Anglian Water, Yorkshire Water, Severn Trent, and United Utilities. I'll let each speaker introduce themselves as we get to their particular point of the session. And then, as I mentioned, we'll be finishing with a Q&A and a panel discussion at the end. So yeah, get those questions in throughout the session. And there's also an option on the Q&A function to upvote questions. So if you see a particular question that is of interest that you'd like to get answered, upvote it, and we'll try and prioritize the top, the most upvoted questions for the panel. And if we don't get around to answering all your questions, we will then send those unanswered questions off to the panelists after, and we can get back to you on those via email. So as I mentioned, my name's Will, and then my colleague Anna as well is supporting me on this. So yeah, move on. Okay, so just a quick intro to why we're doing this session. As many of you are probably aware, the AMP8 or Asset Managed Period 8, the 8th cycle of the regulatory frameworks set by Ofwat, that's coming up starting in April 2025. As always, sustainability is a big focus of the discussions. And the sort of big issue that has been really talked about ahead of this one is that the net zero target, net zero operational emissions by 2030 targets set by the water companies. And this will be the final regulatory period before 2030. So it's a crucial time for companies to deliver and make sure that they meet this big target that was set. So we're hearing from some of the companies today about some of the plans they've got in place for this AMP8 period and what their focuses are, and not just on sort of climate and energy. There's lots of other discussions around various sustainability topics: climate change adaptation, biodiversity, modern slavery, social value. So we'll be hearing about a range of different topics and from a range of different companies and what they're sort of focusing on around these topics. And then we've also got the Supply Chain Sustainability School. Just for those of you that might not be aware, it's an award-winning free virtual learning platform that focuses on sustainability. We cover a range of sustainability topics, water being one of them. There's over 4,000 resources, not just on water, that's across range of topics, energy and carbon, modern slavery, social value, and more. And there's currently 200 plus partners with the school. These are some of the key water partners that we have in the school as well. And yeah, just to signpost you some of the key resources. So we've produced an introduction to water e-learning module, a water sustainability short, and then a sustainable drainage system e-learning module. These are sort of the three most popular water resources we have in the school, but we do have over 100 free resources available on water and stuff. So if you're looking for more support, more opportunities to learn about water and sustainability, then do check it out. There is a specific page on the school as well for water, and that sort of signposts to other resources as well. So yeah, do check all that out when you get a chance. But without further ado, I'll pass over to our speakers. Oh, sorry, no. We'll pass over to them, Anna, and we're going to have a quick Menti poll just to sort of find out who's joined us in the session today, and that kind of thing.
Cool.
So
Thank
Anna,
you
I'll
very
pass
much,
over to you.
Will. Yep, so lovely to meet you all virtually this morning. I can't see any of you, which is quite lovely because we have a huge audience, but lovely to meet you all. I'm Anna Cantwell, a Senior Consultant at Action Sustainability, sort of the partner behind the Supply Chain Sustainability School. Having looked at the participant list, I actually think I recognise quite a lot of you who are on this call this morning. We work with the school a lot on sustainable procurement, modern slavery, so I've seen a lot of familiar faces on this list here, so lovely to have you all with us this morning. Just to figure out who we have in the room and what is sort of pertinent to you all in regards to sustainability, and we want to take something from this session as well, so we can sort of have maybe a few key points for water companies to focus on moving from this session. So could you all please head to menti.com, either use the QR code, head to menti.com and enter the code 12435743 on all of it's on the screen there. So we'll give a little bit of time for you all to get set up on Menti. I can see those little thumbs up in the corner of Menti. You're all joining away there. So give it a little bit longer, get everyone a bit of time to join. Okay, so we're slowly getting people on. It's actually not a time-bound question anyway, so I will open the first question up. So the first question is, who do we have in the room? Do you currently supply to one or more of the water companies? Do you want to supply to water companies? Or are you just interested in water companies and sustainability? Okay, so we have a lot of you on here who are already supplying to the water companies, which is good. You'll get to hear from those who are part of your supply chain. Some of you who want to supply to water companies, hopefully you'll learn a thing or two which will help you in that business. And those of you who are just interested, I'm sure there'll be plenty for you to learn this morning. So no, thank you very much. I think the numbers are pretty stable there, so we hopefully have captured everybody. Next one. Are you a contractor, a supplier, a consultant, a designer, or other? Where do you sit in that supply chain? So we have a lot of contractors, some suppliers, some consultants, a few designers, and a few others as well. Okay, I think the numbers are pretty stable there. So lots of contractors on this morning. Next one. What are your biggest challenges in achieving sustainability when working with water companies? So for those of you that aren't working with water companies, even just give us an idea of what some of those biggest challenges are when you're trying to achieve sustainability. Okay, so big one there, cost. Specifications, understanding. So hopefully we can clarify some of that understanding a bit this morning. Budget, data, timelines, engagement, governance, consistency. Wow, this is a really big word cloud, isn't it? Okay, we'll give it a little bit longer so we can capture it all, because this information that we're gathering here will be really valuable to the water companies. Okay, we'll maybe pause that one there. Okay, and then the final one is, what more could the water companies do to support you in achieving sustainability when working with them? You mentioned specifications before, you mentioned timeframes. What more could they do to help support that achieving of sustainability? Early engagement, guidance, transparency, collaboration, communication. Okay, we'll give it a little bit longer so that it looks like everyone's nearly had a chance to respond. Oh, that's great. So the Menti will be left open. So keep it open as we'll head back into Menti a little later on in the session. So make sure you do keep it open. But for the time being, I will hand over to Anglian Water. We have Andy Brown and Callie Dickens who are here from Anglian Water. So I'll hand over to them right now, and I'll turn myself off so I won't be a distraction there. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Anna. Callie, if you can share the slides from your side, that'd be great. And just while we're doing that, just to say thank you for the opportunity to talk to you all today, and great to see so many of you online. There's over 600, which is fantastic. I'm Andy Brown. I am the Group Chief Sustainability Officer for Anglian Water, which means I work very closely with our board on ensuring that we are delivering against our purpose. Brilliant. I can see the slides up there. That's a big few moment. So I'm going to just take about 5 minutes talking a bit more broadly to set some context, both in terms of the water sector at the moment, but then also kind of what that means from a regional perspective from Anglian. And then I'm going to hand over to Callie, who's going to take through and bring it to life with some examples. So in the Chris Whitty style, next slide, please, Callie. Right. So as we're looking ahead to April and the beginning of AMP8, I mean, there's a couple of things I really wanted to kind of just highlight. And this is the infographic that Ofwat produced. A massive increase, a really significant increase in the level of investment in this AMP period. And this is really essential in terms of our ability to deliver the service that we need, but also to plan for the future, and particularly around managing climate change and both our impacts on climate change, but also reducing risk from climate change and increasing our resilience. And all of that is key to. Right, okay. As I was saying, so AMP8 gives us these challenges, huge increase in investment to deliver the things we need to deliver, really contributing to growth in GDP in the UK. But that's going to require us to grow the supply chain, and it's also going to require us to develop new approaches and new skills. And particularly from an Anglian perspective, we're interested in the development of green skills to deliver against this AMP, but also future AMPs. Okay, next slide, please. So, so all of this is in the context of kind of greater changes to the regulatory framework that we're operating in. So hopefully you're all aware of what the government are doing in terms of the Water Special Measures Bill. And I think it's important to have that in your mind in the context of how we deliver AMP8. And water companies are going to be required to put customers and the environment at the heart of their objectives. So really changing the constitution of us as companies. And that's really key to the way we make decisions. There's a lot coming up on the word cloud around kind of collaboration, funding, decision making. Next slide, Callie.
I can move on to my slides, and then maybe we can I don't know, Andy, have you got connection back at the moment, or? No, I don't think so. Okay, let me see if I can take over from here. Haven't rehearsed these slides, but where we were going with this is around the fact that Anglian Water have adopted within our Articles of Association to become a public interest company. So that means that our purpose is very much part of who we are, and it's all the way through how we operate as a company. I will let Andy talk to some of these slides if and when his connection comes back, but what I'll do is I'll skip ahead to the ones that I'm more familiar with for now. And this is where I'm going to go into a little bit more detail on some of the activities that we do and the areas of focus that we have for going into AMP8. So just a very brief introduction. I'm Callie, I'm the Sustainable Procurement Specialist at Anglian Water. So we're looking at how we work with our supply chain to drive positive and ethical practices and behaviours. And as a purpose-driven organisation, we aim to work with conscientious suppliers who are also preparing for the future and taking positive steps, even if they're small, towards implementing sustainable and innovative solutions within their operations, as well as with us. So looking at tackling modern slavery, according to the Global Slavery Index, it was estimated there are around 50 million people worldwide in modern slavery, and an estimated 122,000 people living in modern slavery in the UK. And I think that was back in 2021-22. At Anglian Water, we're committed to tackling modern slavery in our organisations and supply chain by having measures and controls in place to identify and respond to that risk. So some of the examples, as we've listed here, include conducting supply chain risk assessments during our procurement processes and conducting appropriate due diligence with our suppliers, and where necessary, working with them to put in positive action plans and to enhance our joint approach to tackling modern slavery. For industries known to be higher risk, such as solar and electronics, for example, this could be further down the supply chain in the lower tiers rather than with our direct suppliers. So enhanced due diligence is needed to gain that visibility and transparency, and to ensure that there are appropriate measures in place to respond to any potential risks of, for example, forced labour, debt bondage, child labour. All of these are within the blanket terms of modern slavery. We hold annual engagement events and training programmes, including bespoke training for our procurement teams. And we also work closely with Utilities Against Slavery, which is a group of utilities organisations, including some of our other presenters here this morning, and Slave Free Alliance. And together we're collaborating to develop a more standardised approach and develop best practice and guidance. And by doing this together, we hope to provide a clear and consistent way of working with our suppliers across the water and other utilities industries. So looking at carbon and net zero 2030. So back in 2020, the water industry was the first sector in the UK to commit to net zero carbon emissions by 2030. And Anglian Water has an ambitious capital carbon reduction target of 70% by 2030 against a 2010 baseline. A combination of approaches will be needed between water companies, policymakers, wider cross-industry collaborations and supply chains to achieve these ambitious targets. So in AMP8, there are a number of areas we're looking to focus on, including targeting process emissions, implementing gas to grid schemes, and targeting innovation with our value chain to drive down carbon. We know that we don't have all the answers yet, which is why we're always exploring to find new innovations, technologies, and retrofit solutions together with our value chain. So PAS 2080, so we're using the principles of PAS 2080, the global standard for carbon management and infrastructure. And this is used as a framework to transform the benefits of our systems and provide a sustainable legacy. By working collaboratively across the value chain parties, we're able to achieve carbon and cost reductions at the same time. Ofwat are also increasingly interested in PAS 2080 and embodied carbon targets. So looking at supply chain scope 3 emissions and data, as we head into the next AMP period, there's an increasing focus on understanding scope 3 carbon emissions associated with our supply chains. And that's why we're collecting carbon emissions data from suppliers and, where possible, embodied carbon data, including EPDs or environmental product declarations, to gain insight and identify opportunities, and also in preparation for legislative changes, which I'll touch on in a minute in the next slides. It's often the case that the greatest opportunities for carbon avoidance and reductions lie in the early design stages, where multiple stakeholders, suppliers, industry experts, procurement teams, and others can all come to the table and have these conversations. So early market engagement can help unlock these opportunities for innovation and help to avoid over-prescriptive specifications. And that's quite lucky, because that came up in the word cloud earlier of the challenges or the blockers that we need to overcome to be able to work collaboratively. We're of course always open to conversations around innovative low carbon solutions and collaboration. So for example, how could you help us reduce carbon, enabling, influencing the supply of and using lower carbon concrete, green steel, and avoiding the use of fossil fuels on our sites. I will skip ahead because I'm conscious I don't want to take up too much time. So lower carbon concrete, this is a big area of focus for this AMP period. We have a strong focus on the assets we build, and we've got a low carbon concrete performance commitment for the next 5 years to drive sustainable reductions in carbon emissions through avoidance or reduction in the use of cement and reinforcement steel. Some of the ways we can reduce concrete carbon is reducing the volume of concrete in design, excuse me, working with suppliers using lower carbon products, and repurposing existing assets. Some more examples here on the slide are nitrous oxides monitoring on 17 sites, methane capture, introducing electric HGVs in the charging infrastructure, and so electrification of fleet is an ongoing program. There's some areas of the fleet that's harder than others. For example, cars are easy, jetters are not so much. Gas to grid schemes where biomethane is injected straight into the gas network rather than being used in a CHP or combined heat and power engine, which is much more carbon efficient. Circularity and waste management. So the 10 R's, so when we're considering circular economy, the first stop should be reduction of raw materials usage, with reuse and recycling less preferential, but part of that hierarchy or order of priority. This synchronizes with other sustainability focuses such as carbon and sustainable sourcing. Innovation is key to meeting our shared waste goals and enabled through close collaboration for system change. Please reach out if there are any synchronistic projects or ideas that Anglian Water can support with. We've got a number of avenues to get in contact with us. Enabling circular economy is a great area of opportunity for both doing the right thing and a means of increasing revenues. We're committed to finding means of enabling circularity that also provide benefit to all partners. In terms of reducing plastics and single-use plastics, Anglian Water are one of the sponsors of the East of England Plastics Coalition, and we look for ways to use the 10 R's hierarchy mainly to avoid and reduce plastic packaging and single-use plastics. We know that ridding our region of single-use plastics is a huge challenge. That's why we're working together with like-minded businesses, local authorities, regulators, and organisations. And together, the East of England Plastics Coalition share ideas and resources to find new ways to fight plastic pollution. Through campaigning and education, we can create real change and put an end to this growing problem. And we're working to end the use of avoidable single-use plastics in our business and support our customers and colleagues to keep making little steps to reduce plastic. I'm going to skip on to, oh no, bear with me. And just quickly, the top picture there is one of our case studies, which is greenhouses in Norfolk. So we partnered with Oast House Ventures to use warm water, the natural byproduct of the water recycling process, to heat 2 of the UK's largest greenhouses, one in Norfolk and the other in Suffolk. And through extracting heat from final effluent discharge from our water recycling centres, the glasshouses emit 75% less carbon in heating and cooling in comparison to using traditional fossil fuels. There are additional environmental benefits too, since the water that's recycled to the chalk stream is cooled, which is better for aquatic organisms and less likely to promote bacterial growth. And together, the two greenhouses are capable of producing 10% of the UK's tomatoes. So we're currently exploring the use of similar heating systems powered by wastewater in other settings. So that's just one example of how we can use circular economy to drive environmental benefits. So next, on to nature-based solutions and biodiversity net gain. I've got a couple more slides to go. We've been working with others to achieve significant improvements in ecological quality across our catchments and making the east of England resilient to the risks of drought and flooding. As part of the environmental commitments, we've adopted a zero pollutions mindset across our organisation and expect all suppliers to support us in this approach. We're also committed to Get River Positive, which ensures that we're proactively taking steps to improve river health across our region. So in AMP8, as we've listed here, some of the schemes that we're working on are 12 river restoration schemes, 8 treatment wetlands, and surface water management with the implementation of SUDS, which is sustainable drainage systems. And there's lots of examples for partnership working across our region. For example, there's 1 kilometre of monitored rain garden in Grimsby in partnership with North East Lincolnshire Council and DEFRA. Our AMP8 storm overflow programme will investigate all overflows and improve the 38 high priority sites by 2030. We also plan to deliver focused partnership working opportunities via the Advanced Water Industry National Environment Programme, very snappily titled, or WINEP. There's lots of acronyms, so I've tried to provide the full length versions as well. Some of the case studies pictured on this slide, we've got new berms constructed on the River Gadder in Norfolk, re-meandering on Boughton Brook. We've got SUDS for schools in the bottom left, and the River Gadder again with a newly constructed section of bypass channel. We're looking to deliver nature-based solutions like these wherever we can, and we'll continue to work with others across the region to support nature recovery. Okay, during AMP8, we'll be continuing to manage our land with biodiversity in mind and compensating for losses from construction activities by delivering net gains in biodiversity. Okay, I won't stay too long on this slide, but this is just to highlight the scale of the changing regulatory landscape. So year on year, sustainability and sustainable supply chain reporting requirements have been growing, increasingly comprehensive, with what's been called on many of these events as a regulatory tsunami or regulatory landslide. Either way, take your pick, both are scary titles. All of these will require us to collect, measure, analyse and gain insights and improvements on our supply chain sustainability data. So we're exploring opportunities to standardise sustainability requirements where possible, and the use of IT platforms and third-party verification bodies and tools to simplify the procurement assessment processes for ourselves and our suppliers. CBAM is one that maybe many of you or some of you will have heard of, which is the Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism. That should be coming into force in the UK within the next few years, but it's a case of getting our suppliers and ourselves ready for those changes and what we will be required to report on as well. So I'm sure that one of my other colleagues will be talking on this a little bit later, so I won't go into too much detail. My final slide is around sustainable procurement. So this is around working with our supply chain. So we define sustainable procurement as an approach to purchasing products and services that takes into account the social, economic and environmental factors alongside the traditional price and quality considerations when buying goods, services and works. So some of the things that we have been doing is looking at heat mapping with our supply chains, identifying those material risks and opportunities where we can work with particular categories of spend and different suppliers on the different areas of sustainability. So some of those that I've already touched on. Collecting data, although this can come across as quite an arduous task, it's all helpful in managing and measuring our benefits and improvements and areas that we can work on together. Policies and procedures, we've got a supplier code of conduct, and that is kind of encouraging our suppliers to be aligned with ethical and responsible practices and behaviours, and looking at, using language around encouragement and sometimes specific requirements that we'd require our suppliers to meet in terms of sustainability. I also do lots of annual supplier events and awards ceremonies, and looking out for different opportunities to do some engagement events as well. So that's it from me. I don't know if Andy's connections come back, but I will. If not, I'll hand over to Andrew from Yorkshire Water so that he can talk about Yorkshire Water's AMP8 focus.
Hi, Callie. Actually, you're handing over to me, Colin, first, but I will just wait in case Andy wants to come back onto the screen, in which case I shall take over then. Just bear with me a second whilst I share. And hopefully that's now visible.
Yeah,
okay, so if you can see that, sorry, thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm Colin Robertson. I'm Sustainable Business Manager, and along with Andrew Thompson, who's the Net Zero Carbon Manager, we're going to provide you with a brief overview of Yorkshire Water, our approach to sustainability in the supply chain, some examples of sustainability in practice, in particular with a specific focus on our nature first commitment and net zero journey. First, a little bit about us. We serve 5.5 million customers in the Yorkshire region, and we collect, treat and return to the environment 2.2 billion litres of wastewater and rainwater every day. We manage a wide range of assets, including 85,000 kilometres of clean water and sewer network. We're the second largest landowner in Yorkshire. We've got 28,000 hectares of land. We employ around 4,000 people. We invest £2 million every day to maintain and enhance our assets. And as a result, we support some 6,000 jobs across our supply chain. In our strategy, sustainable business is a foundational element of our 10-year strategy, and that aims to deliver a thriving Yorkshire, one that's right for customers, which means providing quality drinking water that tastes great, bills that everyone can afford, and an easy and reliable service that's tailored to our customers' individual needs, and also doing what's right for the environment, and that means keeping wastewater in the pipes to reduce pollution, protecting our water resources by reducing consumption and leakage, and eliminating carbon from our business to achieve net zero. In the context of our supply chain, for us, sustainability means mitigating sustainability related risks, obviously those such as climate change, water security, human rights, and so on, as well as working collaboratively with our suppliers to create further social, environmental, and economic value. And we've already made progress in integrating sustainability into our decision making. So we've adopted a 6 capitals approach to our decision making. And this means that we look at the long-term value for our business, society, and the environment when making key decisions, such as in the development of our 5-year plans for this forthcoming AMP. And using the 6 capitals, that's helped us establish the wider value. So for every £1 invested, we've identified that will deliver £8 of wider value to Yorkshire society. Each year we use this 6 capitals approach to report on our value. So I think in the word cloud, I saw the word transparency in there, and you can actually access our contribution to Yorkshire report publicly availably through our website. We've also outlined our sustainability priorities and expectations for our supply chain through our Sustainable Procurement Code and integrated sustainability questions into our supplier due diligence, sustainability questions into strategic tenders, And that includes things such as how suppliers can support in the delivery of commitments, such as Nature First, where we will deploy solutions that restore, manage, and mimic nature to benefit both the environment and customers. And Andrew's going to talk about that in a little bit more detail shortly. Another sustainability priority that Andrew's actually also going to cover is our net zero approach. And just as Callie's touched on for Yorkshire Water, it's the same. The supply chain are going to be pivotal to our 2050 journey, as the emissions created in the capital projects, products, the services that we procure are one of the largest portions of our emissions, and measuring and improving these emissions will be key. As Callie also touched on, modern slavery for Yorkshire Water is also a key focus area for us. Clearly, it's a grave violation of human rights, and of course we've got a zero tolerance policy for any form of modern slavery, but a zero tolerance policy is not enough. So while we don't receive goods or services directly from countries where modern slavery is more prevalent, the scale of our extended supply chain is large and complex, and that means that Yorkshire Water and our suppliers, we need to be alert to the risks of modern slavery, to identify and act on them. And just like Anglian, we're also members of the Utilities Against Slavery, that platform for companies to collaborate in the utility sector to address modern slavery risks and issues, and to develop those common approaches so we can work with supply chains consistently, and develop and deliver training sessions as well, such as those that we do in collaboration with the Supply Chain Sustainability School today, so amongst other things. Collaboration is important for us also with our supply chain, and actually it's helped us develop new approaches. So, for example, many of the contract partners we worked with in AMP7 had dedicated teams who were supporting their businesses to deliver social value. And that had become an increased priority for them as a result of work on Central Government Contract Social Value Act. And through our 6 capitals approach, we already assess, as I mentioned earlier, the value to society that the assets that we will deliver once they're built will have. However, we wanted to understand more about the social value that is created during the construction phase of these assets. And in AMP7, we trialled a process with a range of partners to test potential for data capture from our supply chain and how that relates to individual projects that are delivered on our behalf. This actually was data that a number of partners were already collating. So we worked to set up a process that made the value created by that project more visible, both to ourselves and to the local communities and to the partners as they relate to that individual project. So, for example, on the screen here, you've got Rosmead Street, which is a project which is part of our Living with Water partnership. It's a partnership with the Environment Agency, Hull City Council, and East Riding of Yorkshire Council, which is targeted to make people more aware of water, risks of flooding, and to act on it. We delivered a permeable paving project that would reduce flood risks to the residents of this street, and it would also, for our benefit, of course, reduce the stormwater runoff burden to our wastewater drainage. However, in addition to these outcomes, the project provided work experience, apprenticeship opportunities, schools and community engagements, volunteering in that community. And so we captured that and calculated that in this project alone, the monetized value of that value was around £72,000. In addition, we've improved how we collaborate with contract partners. So our education teams collaborate with our partner social value teams. So they go out to schools and they deliver collaborative engagements, for example, aiming to inspire more young people to understand the opportunities in the construction and water sectors as well, and consider careers in our sectors. And we'll be honing and improving this approach throughout AMP8. And we've also worked in partnership with our capital contract partners on other issues. For example, in our efforts to reduce the embodied emissions of our capital projects, which is clearly part of our net zero journey, we established regular net zero workshops involving Yorkshire Water colleagues and supply chain partners. And we established several collaborative task and finish groups working on individual areas. So they'd include concrete, materials, fuel, and so on. The concrete group led to a collaboration between our contract partner, McDonald Bentley, Hyperion Robotics, Tarmac, and they created 4 3D concrete printed versions of a draw pit, which was for installation at our Eschol wastewater treatment works, which is near Bradford. And by being 3D printed, the structure was designed in a different shape, and that meant that the structure could use less material, and so weighed almost half of the size of a traditional draw pit, and as a result cut emissions by 40%. But the process also had other co-benefits, such as reducing health and safety risks on site. And then finally, before I hand over to Andrew, we're also supporters of the Supply Chain Sustainability School, and that's why we're here as well, of course, and we continue to commit to support our value chain. So this slide shows the resources that our supply chain have taken up, and the indicative numbers and the value of those who've accessed the workshops and the e-learning resources, all for free of charge, but the monetized value of those resources to our value chain. So I'll hand over to Andrew.
Thank you, Colin, and good morning, everyone. Going to do the swap over onto to my screen, so I can take control, if I may. Okay, hopefully you're all seeing my my screen now, but as others have said, there's a slight delay. So good morning, I'm Andrew Thompson. I'm the Net Zero Carbon Manager for Yorkshire Water, and I'm going to run over a little bit of the work that we're doing in terms of...
Sorry, Andrew, the slides aren't on. I think it's the wrong screen that you've shared to.
Right, possibly. Try again. I'll stop sharing and then share again. Thanks, Anna. It's good to have someone else that can keep a wary eye on things. Right.
Yeah, there we go. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you. Great. You can see that now.
Yes, it's just not in full screen at the moment.
Okay. Well, I'll try it in the full screen mode now. There we are.
If you just switch the settings.
Yeah. Lovely.
There we go. Perfect.
Okay. Well, good morning, everyone, and apologies for the slight delay when we get the technical issues out of the way. Hopefully, we won't have any others along the way. So, as I've said, Andrew Thompson, Manager of Net Zero Carbon for Yorkshire Water, and I'm going to cover some of the work that we've been doing to put sustainability into practice via our Nature First commitment and obviously our commitment to deliver net zero carbon. So moving swiftly on, I think Colin's already highlighted the 10-year strategy and how sustainability is one of the foundations of our corporate 10-year strategy. Net zero and a healthy environment and sort of a modern resilient infrastructure is really integral to that, and it's part of putting a healthy natural environment alongside net zero as part of the work that we do to deliver effectively a thriving Yorkshire right for the environment and right for our customers. In terms of the challenges when we're looking at both Nature First and net zero, I think it's worth sort of zooming back out to climate risk and looking at climate change in the lens that we look at it within a principal risk for the business. So both the climate adaptation work and the net zero mitigation work are two of the sort of the corporate risks that form part of our climate change principal risk. And in the middle of that sits the transition risks, and this is where the supply chain really fits in, because both in terms of the tsunami of regulations that Callie alluded to, and also the vulnerability of the supply chain and the ability of the supply chain to both adapt to climate change and to help us on the transition to net zero, are really important parts. So you can see the adaptation piece of the jigsaw puzzle that we have to work on includes all of the work that we'll be doing to alleviate sewer flooding, storm overflows, improve rivers, etc. And that fits into the Nature First approach that I'll talk to in a second. But also on the net zero side, the Nature First approach and our TOTEX hierarchy for all of the new assets we build, integrally important. And underlying everything is really about, doing it with no regrets investment. So there's a lot of things that we have to work with closely, particularly with our supply chain, to get our assets into a resilient state, modernized, as we said, and fit for the long-term future. So how do we approach the nature-based solutions? We've adopted the Nature First principles, and you can see these in the Nature-Based Solutions Initiative guidelines. So there are 4 key guidelines in that, and I think I just highlight the fact that they're not a substitute for reducing greenhouse gas emissions, but they're complementary to it. All of our ecosystems hold opportunities, and you can see the little flags in the top right-hand corner of the slide here, with everything from the catchment areas, peat restoration, down into the sort of the lower lands with constructed wetlands, and then in the urban environments as blue-green solutions, including the sustainable urban drainage systems. So every ecosystem holds an opportunity for us. We can't do any of this without partnership, and even though Colin's alluded that we're a significant landowner, a lot of the catchment land that we rely on is held and owned by third parties, and there are other users within the value chain. So we have everything from dairy farmers to peppercorn rent sheep farmers, to other land users that have an influence over the land, and how that interplays with the quality of the water that we're able to supply to our customers, the flood alleviation approaches. And then finally, I think the last principle is around biodiversity. So obviously a lot of you will be familiar with the rise of biodiversity net gain. And biodiversity is a fantastic thing for us to be driving, and it's probably the most important measure. Rather than sometimes we look at the number of trees we plant, really we've got to start to use biodiversity as a measure for and it's key anchor for our Nature First strategy. So looking at Nature First for us, I've said it's a sort of an area that covers from catchment all the way through to the sea for us. So you can see it as a golden thread, source to sea. There's lots of different elements of it. I won't go through each of the details on the slide because I'm conscious of the usual tyranny of time. But the key message I want to get across is that we won't be able to deliver the kind of change and the type of solutions that we have to deliver source to sea without the engagement of supply chains and the capacity and the skills within the supply chain. So putting this into practice, we also use the PAS 2080 standard that Callie has given a nod to as well. PAS 2080 is and has been a key part for us. We used the TOTEX hierarchy to drive capital decarbonisation through AMP7. We'll continue that work into the AMP8 period. We tend to take the approach which is to avoid build greener, build smarter, and ultimately driving as far as we can nature first solutions rather than building grey assets. Maximizing ecosystem services for us is about minimizing the knock-on consequences, whether that's the knock-on consequences of having to use more energy, or the knock-on consequences of having to embed more carbon in the assets we build. But we're very mindful that the supply chain capacity and skills to deliver the effective and resilient solutions we need is something that we need to work on collaboratively, and it won't just happen in and of its own right. So moving from the sort of nature first approach across to our net zero journey, and I'm just going to put a bit more sort of colour maybe on the challenge that Will set out right at the start of net zero by 2030. The water industry's commitment to net zero is based around operational emissions. So I'd like to just sort of recouch the goal that Will set in terms of the 2030 journey will be around our reduction to net zero, or to neutralise our scope 1 and 2 and our directly outsourced scope 3 emissions. And for us, the net zero journey across all scopes, which includes the very important scope 3, will be a journey by 2030, which is aligned to the UK government target. Scope 3 emissions will be, they're intransient. You will not deliver scope 3 emissions without the supply chain. So talking to you all today, you'll be conscious, you'll be aware of your own scope 1, scope 2 emissions and how they form part of our scope 3 emissions, working collaboratively with the supply chain for us to deliver a net zero transition aligned to some science-based pathways is a very important part of our journey. So I look forward to exploring that in a little bit more detail. To put this in context, I think the size of the arrows here in terms of the scope 1, 2 and 3 shows the relative scale of emissions. There are lots of categories of scope 3 emissions at the moment which form a relatively minor part. So for us, investments and commuting are quite small. And as Colin has alluded, purchased goods and capital goods are massive portions of our emissions. Probably those two combined double the amount of our operational emissions. So the scope 3 emissions are in scale the big challenge that we have to address over the course of the next 25 years. So just to put a bit of a sort of a picture to those words, over the next 10 years out to 2035, you can see the scale here of our capital goods increasing, and this reflects the scale of the additional investment which Andy spoke to right at the start. We've seen the largest ever investment program allowed by Ofwat for AMP8, 104 billion for the industry as a whole. I think it's 8.7 billion for Yorkshire Water. So that will result in an acceleration of the amount of assets we build. If we build all great assets, then we will obviously be putting a lot of additional emissions from purchased goods, capital goods, into our pot of emissions, and it will also have locked-in emissions. So using our nature first hierarchical approach to avoid build greener, green smarter is really important for us. Moving on to look at that perhaps from a sort of a very water-centric way of looking at things, a water butt analogy. We have a lot of projects which will be increasing the emissions, pouring into the top of the water butt, and at the bottom we have a lot of improvement projects and programs and approaches to ensure that we reduce the amount of water or the amount of emissions in our water butt. And right at the top of the pile, I've said, is the nature-based solutions, but we also have optimization of the YNEP and our WRMP, and apologies again for the acronym, but that's the Water Industry National Environment Programme and the Water Resources Management Plan solutions. So those optimizations and working with our key supply chain on collaboration for success is really important. We've got quite a lot of enhancement investment that we've been allowed by the regulator to address the process emissions, which is another large part of our emission profile that forms part of our scope 1 emissions. This is both nitrous oxide and methane. If you're aware that nitrous oxide and methane both have a very, very high global warming potential. So we're talking about nitrous oxide with a global warming potential close to 300 times that of carbon dioxide, and methane about 30 times greater. So these are really big challenges for us to get after. So we've been making significant investment in improving the digestion processes, potentially covering tanks and doing something called vacuum degassing to address methane, and then optimization of our activated sludge processes by using real-time control systems to optimize for both compliance with the discharge that we have from our sites, but also to optimize for energy use and optimize for nitrous oxide emissions. So these are big opportunities for us. They're all new areas of work. They will rely on supply chain partners both to deliver them from a construction point of view and also deliver them from a supply product solution point of view. So again, opportunities for the supply chain. We're also looking for other innovative solutions from the supply chain as well. So we don't know everything yet. So there's always another trick out there, and we're willing to listen and learn and to collaborate with the wider partners in the industry. So just to sort of wrap up, I've got 2 other slides left. So this slide just shows you the scale of our energy transition. So to address our scope 2 emissions, we will need to be addressing the amount of emissions associated with the purchased electricity. So we have a big journey to take place, and you'll see the change between 2025 effectively out to 2030, with a move away from reliance on purchased grid electricity to more self-generation. a lot of energy efficiency that needs to be achieved, use of renewable power purchase agreements, and expanding our use of private wire connections to different energy sources, including things like other renewables or energy from waste facilities. So a big transition. And when you look at the amount of energy we consume, which is equivalent to 50,000 UK homes per year, that's 630 gigawatts of electricity. I can never remember how many zeros when I have to write it down, I have to think about it. It's such a large amount. So just to wrap up, our AMP8 journey will see an integrated approach for resilience, climate adaptation, environmental protection, net zero, and the wider social value and sustainability. We have an extremely significant capital programme. It's our largest ever, and approaching this from a nature first approach and using the TOTEX hierarchy to deliver solutions with a low whole life carbon will be a key challenge and an opportunity. We'll be looking for integrated solutions starting at the catchment level, and we'll be informed by data. We'll work closely with our supply chain to deliver solutions that are right for our environment and the wider community. Ultimately, supply chain decarbonisation will be essential for success and will require a collective and collaborative effort. And I'd like to thank you for listening, and look forward to working with you in partnership. And I'm going to hand back over, I think, to United Utilities, if I may.
Sorry, just over to Catherine at Severn Trent.
Sorry, over to Catherine at Severn Trent.
Thanks, Andrew. I'll do my best now with the tech situation. Okay. Oh. How does that look?
So we just can't see it in full slides. We can still see the surroundings.
Oh no. Okay. Any tips? There's not much for me to choose on the screen to make that any different.
Have you clicked the full screen slideshow?
Full screen, yeah, it's full screen on for me. My side.
Okay.
Any better?
Are you in present mode?
Yeah.
Um,
How would I double check?
maybe stop sharing and try sharing again. You can maybe see the right screen to share.
Okay. So presenter mode is on the main screen, right?
Yeah.
So
if there's an issue, I'm happy. We've got the slides. I'm happy to share.
I think there's an issue. I can't get it.
Yep.
My side, it looks like it's a full screen, so apologies.
It's fine.
There's not many slides, so you don't have to do many next slide, please situations. Look, thank you so much. Right, good morning, everyone. We're still in the morning. I'm Catherine Morris. I'm the Capital Sustainability Lead at Severn Trent. I should be here with a colleague who was doing her role as Sustainability Supply Chain Specialist. So forgive me, I won't have the nuance on that aspect that she would have brought, but I'll do my best to cover all of those aspects. My role at Severn Trent is primarily to aid our supply chain, our design and delivery teams to produce designs, execute those in delivery with sustainability in mind, with the least environmentally impactful solutions. And I'm a bit tenacious in that regard. I'm always striving to put sustainability in the upper echelons along with health and safety, cost and time. So yeah, Severn Trent sort of sometimes regret having me, but at the same time, that's what it's all about, right? Pushing the boundaries. So next slide, please. Our focus for this was around the supply chain, and I think it's really lovely to see the other presentations so far that a lot of the things that I want to reference I've spoken about already, and that kind of, I think, really cements the idea that we're in this together, and we have got really there's a strong focus on the same deliverables, so our supply chain are becoming more and more integral to the success of that. So AMP8, we had an outstanding plan for final determination from Ofwat. It's a massive investment, so 6.4 billion enhancement in spend. From a capital perspective, that is double the programme that we had in AMP7 and a little bit extra. And some of the core principles that we've got for addressing sustainability on the screen, just picking some out. Protecting 3% of England's nature recovery network through our biodiversity commitments. Biodiversity, as Andrew touched on, is key, absolutely, to the success of delivery of all of these outputs. And it's really important to us, as it was in AMP7, as it will be in AMP8. Strengthening water resilience to ensure we can meet customer demand during hot weather. So that climate resilience is a baseline throughout all of our design focus. Delivering operational net zero by 2030, standard across the water industry, but how we will do that is very much in collaboration, innovation, and just making sure we've got the right processes and governance. Scale investment into water treatment and biosolids to address PFAs. The thing with sustainability is that although we work in AMP cycles and we've got a 5-year plan ahead of us, the sustainability goalposts move really quickly, and they do that. We have to react to that. So PFAs was not something perhaps that we really considered in the last 10 years. And I can imagine in AMP9, it will be something that we really, really heavily have to focus on. So looking at that and accepting that that's something that we definitely need to focus on now and in the future is here with PFAs. Halving storm overflow usage by 2030 as we strive to global best practice. This is really, really important to us, nature and our customers. So it's something, again, that perhaps we don't foresee at sometimes, but we're here to react to. And our plan was very much a combination of both of those things in reaction to addressing things that have become more focused in recent years and our projection on what's coming in the future. So reducing impact on rivers, the final one there to pick out, accounting for just 2% of RNAGs by 2030. So some really challenging targets, really great focus, but a broad range of sustainability topics. And in order for us to do that, AMP8 will require us to do things differently. And very much carbon, biodiversity, circular economy, social value, modern slavery are all part of that journey and our focus in the next 5 years and beyond. Next slide, please. So focusing on our key principles, sustainability is central to our corporate strategy. And in turn, it's embedded throughout our procurement and contract management lifecycle. So consideration and delivery against key sustainability issues is increasingly forming a more substantial part of how we procure and work with our supply chain. And those are covered broadly in the three areas that we've got highlighted here. Increasing weighting at tender alongside cost and quality. All sourcing strategies, contract awards and extensions will require a sustainability sign-off, so it ensures that all potential risks and opportunities are identified. We've got, for our capital contractors, we've introduced a Green Star metric, This was along the lines of the Construction Leadership Council's 9-point strategy, and alongside the other 5-point strategy they developed with Thames Crossing. We picked and worked with our supply chain to see what kind of metrics that we could look at that supported driving really key sustainability topics, but also that were had recognition to the size and of their establishments, and how we could drive performance without it being really too difficult to execute, but also to draw upon their status in the sustainability journey. So having that collaboration is really important. And those Green Star metrics are intertwined with KPM measures. So there's real live targets that have a financial implication. Our dedicated team has grown to meet these increasing expectations. So as I said, I should be presenting with Lucy. Lucy is part of the sustainability procurement team. I'm capital sustainability, and we have a strategic sustainability department. All of those aspects within the Severn Trent portfolio have grown. With respect to the commercial aspect, each one of the suppliers and expectations within the people that we work with in our supply chain from those guys have received training. So all commercial procurement and contract management roles have got specific training on sustainability procurement. Importantly, in all of these, we ensure we adopt an approach that's relevant and proportionate to the industry and supplier. I think that's really key to the success of this. But that underlying all of that is the striving to meet the 3 core principles that we've got in front of us. So first one, improving transparency. It's a lot about data, so access and having greater visibility of potential environmental, social risks and opportunities so we can address these effectively. Build a better understanding and accuracy of our data, carbon and waste in particular, so we can identify hotspots, challenge in the right way, set the right targets, and importantly, inform decision making. And look beyond the nearest tiers to gain greater transparency across our value chain. So this is particularly driven by reporting requirements, for example, TNFD. Oh no, I've got a guest. Excuse me. She always likes the limelight. What terrible timing. That's cats for you, I think. Second one, build knowledge and capability to deliver. So we're really committed to working with our supply chain partners to build capability, recognizing that some are less mature in their approach than others. We can't all be tier 1 contractors, and we understand that having really difficult targets and expectations doesn't suit all of our supply chain. We do this through dedicated engagement programs. So we've also got focus groups, one-on-one supplier sessions throughout our expert partnerships with the supply chain school as well. And this year we've introduced supplier learning pathways dedicated to specific areas of sustainability. And then number 3, collaborate. My most, I think, the one I'm most passionate about. Everybody on this call will be here because we want to play a part in doing this correctly and learning and understanding and therefore contributing to how this is all done. So we really recognise the importance of collaboration to address key sustainability challenges. That's with our sector peers and the guys who are presenting today, and our supply chain partners, and of course our customers. So creating opportunities to understand the challenges and identify the solutions and share lessons learned is really important. One thing we've just launched in January was our first Carbon Innovation Forum, which was aimed at co-developing solutions that reduce carbon, and really listen and engage with our supply chain and other water industry representatives to say how we can do things better, how we can adjust things, and really aim to make this a collaborative movement to a more sustainable development cycle. Next slide, please. Okay, so these are the sort of key focus areas, just picking out I think we've probably gone over them in some detail already, but just to pick them out, we've got the Scope 3 carbon reduction, data. It's really important that we start getting clear data, more data and accurate data to enable us to really understand the impacts that we're having, low-hanging fruit, and then tailoring our approach. So it's really key that we get engagement from our supply chain on data capturing. Science-based targets and transition plans. We've had science-based targets for a few years, and we're moving into the next stage of what that might look like in the coming years as well. So that's something that we hold with high regard. Modern slavery. There are some huge efforts within Severn Trent to tackle this, and it's something that we're really, really passionate about. And if Lucy was here, she'd do a stellar job of explaining all of the attributes that we've got to address modern slavery within our supply chain. Biodiversity net gain. It's the one closest to my heart. I think it's really, really important that we think about our impact on biodiversity from the conception of our designs, and the mitigation hierarchy looks at the fact that we need to consider what the value of our assets are nature-wise before we start working, and make sure that we impact them in the least impactful manner that we can before we start thinking about how we put net gain back afterwards. And circular economy, social value and climate adaptation, 3 really key points that are integrated in the way we want to deliver AMP8 and beyond. So what we wanted to just look at in particular within this was the carbon and the Scope 3 carbon reduction aspect. It's kind of hot off the press, it's new, and so we thought that was probably the best area of focus for this session, and that's how I will continue in the next couple of slides. So next one, please. That's that one. So yeah, our expectations. So set and deliver against a science-based target for your organisation. So we've at the moment got science-based targets integral to our procurement. We've got reporting, utilise and complete our carbon tools. We've had a carbon tool bespoke for Severn Trent for the past AMP, so all of AMP7. And we're hoping that in AMP8 we'll have something a little bit jazzier to help us out with the demands of regulatory requirements on new carbon data capture and the expectations of our regulators on those. And reduce, so work with us to design and construct differently. We're desperate to work with you and hear about what you have to offer and how we can, if there's any blockers that we have, sometimes we can't see those and frustration occurs and we don't really see it. So it's really important that we feel that our supply chain are open and honest with us about that. And of course, we've got lots of ways in which we can measure the success of that through the Green Star metrics and the KPMs, as I suggested before. And then we've also got a really cool challenge in 2025 for each of our Lot 1 partners to put forward a completely zero diesel-free site. And so, yeah, so that's really great. And haven't got long left. So next slide, please. Many of you have mentioned PAS 2080, and PAS 2080 forms part of the foundation of how we're approaching carbon reduction, and we recognise that everybody has got a part to play in that. I always like to associate this with health and safety as well. We need to give you a platform to which you are then responsible for your own sustainability aspects, just like you're responsible for your own health and safety. So that kind of underpins how we try and operate, and that's very much symbolised and led through PAS 2080, which we've aligned as many of our processes and tools to aid that inception as well. Next slide, please. So AMP8, we have a capital carbon ODI. It's our only bespoke ODI, this AMP, and it's a really exciting opportunity for us to work with our supply chain in order to demonstrate a real change in thinking in embodied carbon reduction. So the basic concept is that we have 2 points of reference. The first point is at a single solution, so the end of optioneering, and the second point is that as-built calculation. So we didn't have a company-wide baseline, we did it on a project-by-project analysis, and that allows us to have a real examples of carbon reduction for us to learn about, share that learning and bring that back into the tools and data and information that we can share to just complete that loop of always learning and being better. The continuously learning is part very much of the underpinning of this ODI as well. So to enable D-sector carbonisation to not be part of something that we triumphantly say was ours, we designed this so that only our business decisions were captured and enabled a reward mechanism. So anything between point 1 and 2 that is sector decarbonisation is not something that we can capture as a benefit for this ODI. It really means that we're driving a really great programme of work with respect to decision-making, governance, and how we'll hopefully look at and integrate innovation. So it's a great step in the right direction for us. Next slide, please. So really quickly then, science-based targets and carbon data. We need to understand how we're impacting the environment, and that data source and analysis is really important. So just speaking to those in our supply chain already and anybody who wants to come in to Severn Trent in the future, it's really important that we get that low level data just coming in consistently as we require it. Carbon ODI, we're really interested in ideas, your solutions, any case studies, and like I said earlier, anywhere where you feel like we don't support that decision making, and so we can try and address that and engage. So supply chain CSR at severntrent.co.uk is where we would like you to get in contact should you have any specific questions or want us to have a little chat with you about anything, and we'd be really happy to hear from you. And that's me, thank you. And I'm handing over to United Utilities.
Good morning, thanks Catherine. I'm Catherine Owens, I'm the Head of Sustainability and ESG for United Utilities. And with my colleague Sarah, we're today going to talk about our approach to sustainability at United Utilities, why managing our relationship with nature is fundamental to what we do, and then specifically how that has led us to our focus on rainwater management in AMP8. So it's been really great to hear the other presentations. And I think I just wanted to reiterate before I start, a lot of what's been said around the ambition with regards to carbon and net zero and common industry commitments are all just as relevant at UU as they are for our colleagues in other organisations. And so I think I just wanted to sort of reiterate some of those really positive messages that we've heard already this morning. Somebody else has started sharing. Should I take over, or is somebody clicking? Someone's clicking. Okay. So at UU, our purpose is to provide great water for a stronger, greener and healthier Northwest. And just to put that into context, we're obviously the water and wastewater provider for the Northwest of England, which means that we have more than 7.3 million people that we serve, as well as 200,000 businesses. And geographically, we're, as many of you might know, we're a sort of hilly region that's famously quite wet. And so a lot of our water supply is in reservoirs. So we do have some river abstractions and groundwater, but the majority is from reservoirs. And we're really lucky that we own a huge amount of our own catchment land, which gives us a great amount of control over how that land's used, and so we can manage it for water quality, which is really important. So we're custodians of 56,000 hectares of land, and on each year we see more than 28% more water runoff across our catchments than the rest of the country, which I think is a sort of illustration of just how wet it can be up north. In terms of our urbanised areas, we've got some really big urban conurbations, particularly those with Victorian heritage. So we're sort of a product of the Industrial Revolution, thinking of kind of a number of our big cities like Liverpool and Manchester, but also the sort of industrial heartland of Lancashire. As well as that, we have some really rural urban areas. So we're sort of topped and tailed by Cumbria and Cheshire. So there's a lot of different challenges across the region. We're also the region of the country that has more postcodes that are considered to be deprived than anywhere else in the country. So we have 12% of our households are affected by water poverty, which is a real challenge for our customers, and is something that we step into and we actively support. 1 in 6 households next AMP will be supported with the payment of their water bill. Of the land that we have in the region, 34% of it is under environmental protection. So that obviously offers layers of additional obligation in terms of how we manage it, but also can limit what we're able to do on it. And we run with 54% of our sewers combined, meaning that 54% of our sewers take surface water and rainwater as well as sewage. And across that network, there's over 2,000 storm overflows. So hopefully that just gives a bit of a flavour of kind of who we are, where we are, and the kind of asset base that we operate. Looking to next AMP, there's some really key challenges in our region. So we are expecting more than 1 million people population growth over the next 25 years. And we're expecting to see that uptick really starting in the next 5 years. We're already seeing the impact of climate change, and we've done some modelling looking at a county level within the region. So we have a really good understanding of the regional variations we're expecting to see across our counties. But overall, we are expecting and seeing more severe rainfall events, hotter, drier summers, and increasing water temperatures in our reservoirs. And as others have already mentioned, we are also facing the growing expectations of regulators in terms of environmental requirements, but also customers and the public focus that we've seen on the water industry in recent years. We could move on. Thank you. So in terms of our purpose, as I've said, it's to provide great water for a stronger, greener and healthier Northwest. And this really illustrates how, for UU, managing our environment managing our relationship with the environment and with nature is absolutely key to what we do. We're really lucky that the sort of the 3 pillars that we work to in terms of creating that stronger, greener and healthier Northwest also align really closely with our ESG vision. So ESG being environment, society and governance, that's how we structure our approach to sustainability. And this is really important for us because we are a company that's listed on the FTSE 100. So being really strong across ESG is really important to our investors, and to make sure that we are sustainable financially as well as looking at our own operations. We also frame a lot of our decisions through that lens of ESG. So we use a number of different performance and reporting approaches under the sort of the E, the S and the G to really help make sure that the decisions we're taking support our sustainability ambitions. If we could move on, please. Thank you. So in recent years, one of the areas that's been a really big focus for UU has been accounting for nature and looking at how we can really embed that within our business to help drive good decision making. So last AMP, we developed a natural capital account, and we use that actively to help us understand, first of all, how we interact with nature, but also to make meaningful decisions and allow us to make clear disclosures and have full transparency. And we do that in line with the Task Force for Nature financial disclosures. So for those on the call who've heard of TCFD, which is the sort of standard for carbon disclosures, we were an early adopter of the nature-related financial disclosures. And this means that there are standards of data collection that we have to have, but also it drives action within the business to ensure that we can demonstrate that we are operating and making good sustainable decisions that support the nature in our area. So as I've said, we are completely dependent on the nature in the Northwest. We are dependent on the land and how the land's used. We're dependent on the rain and how it falls, and we're completely dependent on our natural environment to in many cases take on the discharges and the waste that we need to dispose of. So whether it's disposal to land, water, or using the raw materials, we absolutely are invested in making sure that we are supporting the nature of the Northwest. And we also recognise that managing our nature-related risks actually helps to drive our resilience. We work very closely with partners across the Northwest, particularly thinking about flooding and flood risk and how we can use nature and the resources that we have to actually help manage some of those challenges. So I think essentially the ethos is that we know we need to look after our land, and it will look after the water that we need to provide the service to our customers. So I'm about to hand over to my colleague Sarah, who'll introduce herself. And Sarah is going to pick up here thinking about a specific area where we're focusing on rainwater management in AMP8 as part of our vision for a sustainable future for the Northwest.
Excellent. Thank you, Catherine. Yeah, so I'm Sarah Jenner. I am Head of Catchment Planning, Conservation and Partnerships at United Utilities. And what I really wanted to sort of cover here is a bit more about how we look to manage this relationship we have with nature, and particularly in the context of managing rain, which is a fantastic resource, but managed in the wrong way can cause significant challenges. So if we just move on. Okay, so I'm going to just touch on here our catchment systems thinking approach. And I think what I found quite interesting at the beginning is the key points people were raising right at the beginning with the Menti was that cost was a real challenge in terms of delivering sustainability, and collaboration was a challenge. And I think they go to the heart of really what we're trying to do here with catchment systems thinking, which is about looking at the catchment as a full system, understanding what's going on in that system, and then working with partners to find those solutions, and particularly aligning needs and developing plans to achieve those outcomes. And that is no small undertaking. And that's really where I'm going to then talk about the integrated water management plan that's being delivered in Greater Manchester, which is looking to really crack this issue so that we can start to work much more in tandem with partners on a much more routine basis to tackle some of these really knotty sustainability issues. So in terms of this Greater Manchester Integrated Water Management Plan, this came about a couple of years ago, really on the back of some long-term collaboration we've had in the Greater Manchester area. And that was really fostered through a project called Natural Course that we were lucky to have EU funding for back in the days when we were members of the EU. But it's really helped us to understand much better the partners in the area and understand what we need to do collectively to make a change and make do things differently. So the integrated water management plan, what this is really looking to do is exactly this piece of aligning needs and issues so that we can start to find collaborative solutions to solving them. So one of the key aspects of this plan is a living integrated opportunity programme. So this isn't really about a static plan at all. This is about having the capability to integrate on a routine basis with partners. At this moment in time, the key partners involved are the Greater Manchester Combined Authority, ourselves and the Environment Agency, and Transport for Greater Manchester have also become involved. But even with those kind of 4 organisations, we are looking at something like 2.4 billion of investment in the next 5 years in that area. If we can make that investment more sustainable, then that's going to make a really big difference, particularly for rainwater. And if anyone's been to Manchester recently, you'll see the pace of development is really significant. So the need for this is really, really key. Ultimately, what we're looking to do is get to this integrated investment plan where we are routinely able to invest as partners. Now, I'm only too aware that one of the challenges we often have as a water industry is we have lots of constraints of ring-fence programs, regulatory dates to meet, and things like that, which makes it hard for us to align sometimes to create this partnership delivery. So if we just move on, what I'm going to touch on is we've got a couple of key programs to manage rainwater differently. And this is because we've got a significant challenge with the amount of rain in the combined sewer systems. And we know it's really challenging to get cost-effective interventions that get it out of the sewer system. And really partnership working is the key opportunity, because a lot of rainwater management solutions, like rain gardens, like NFM, they deliver multiple benefits to multiple organisations. And by working together, we think we can unlock a lot more of this than we are ordinarily able to do. So let's say we've got 2 programmes. The first one to tackle storm overflow operation is actually called an advanced WINIP. And what this is really about is this is a regulatory innovation. So we are working really closely, sharing lessons with the Environment Agency and Ofwat and the wider industry as we move forwards. Because the hope is that this can then influence how we can be more agile as an industry in future AMPs. And what we're looking to do here is effectively, we've got sight of a 25-year investment programme in storm overflows. So as well as delivering those named schemes we've got in our AMP8 plan, we want to get ahead and start delivering the rainwater management elements of those future projects. And by doing that, we can align a massive pipeline of future activity with the work that our partners are doing. So some examples down below here, where we've already been co-investing in sustainable drainage in places where there's things like sustainable transport schemes and urban regeneration. So these are the sorts of things that we want to be able to routinely do. Is we don't want to pick up, developers' obligations, but we want absolute exemplar in terms of the management of rainwater. Wherever there is brownfield development, we need that to go as far as possible to manage rainwater differently and get it out of the combined sewer systems. And then we've got a similar but smaller programme looking at sewer flood risk, which is again purely looking at rainwater management solutions, and that's looking in 6 particular geographies across the northwest, with a dominance in the Preston area, but it does also have some in Greater Manchester in the Hazel Grove area. So these are really, really key programmes for us that we will be driving, and they contribute to 2 really key targets around reducing internal sewer flooding by 40% in the next 5 years, and storm overflow operation, reducing that by 33%. And we want to go as far and as fast as we can on these, because we know they are key issues for customers. So if we just move on. I guess the final piece for me really is United Utilities has a united supply chain, and we have expectations for our suppliers around extending our values into the supply chain. So my ask really of suppliers is to really think about and challenge the use of rainwater management as a resource. in all of your work. And, you know, if you've got opportunities to work with us where you are delivering big regeneration projects and things like that, let us know. We might be able to come and make them even better as we get rainwater out of sewer systems. So that's it really for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So now we have a question and answer section. Our lovely speakers and panelists, if you can all come back into the room. I'm just going to stop sharing my slides so you don't see the placeholder here. Welcome back, everybody, and thank you very much for your presentations there. We have quite a number of questions that have come through. A fair few of them we've answered already throughout the session this morning. So feel free to have a flick through those participants and see some of those that have already been answered. But what we're going to do now is we're going to go through those most upvoted questions. So the first one is from Justin, and it's about how can we as suppliers and manufacturers hope to promote more sustainable solutions when cheapest is best is often the norm. I'm wondering who would be best to answer this one. Seeing as it's on sustainable procurement, I'm wondering if maybe Callie, you could have a go at this one first, and then anybody else can chip in.
I can have a go at answering that, and I'm very much welcoming my counterparts in other companies to also step in as well. So this question is a very good question. So for us, you know, and as all of us as an industry, and as we're highlighting in the presentations today, we're working on shifting the dial to ensure that we're embedding sustainability within the decision making and the procurement processes. But we've also got to make sure that we're able to deliver our core business priorities of delivering safe, clean water to our customers and remain financially viable. One of the examples of how we work with our Tier 1 capital delivery alliance partners is we embed specific performance commitments with them and metrics around customer and community, environmental stewardship, river health and environment, asset resilience and innovation, and a few others. So we're really trying to build it into the heart of how we work with our supply chain. And we're trying to consider on a case-by-case basis what the most material risks and opportunities are so that that can be factored into that procurement process. So we work very closely with our procurement teams to make sure that sustainability is part of the key language that we're using with our suppliers, and that we're putting appropriate focus and weighting on those questions where we need to with specific tenders. If anyone else has anything to add to that response, I welcome you to step in as well.
Oh, all good. We'll move on to the next one. Oh, sorry, Colin.
Sorry, Anna. Thanks. I thought that was a good response, Callie. I think the presumption that the unsustainable is cheapest, as well as something that will change over time. We talked about the carbon border adjustment mechanism, which will add cost onto the import of or higher carbon materials into the UK. So the alternatives will reduce. And as you say, there's a lot of collaboration and work on projects which actually change the perspective of different ways of delivery. So, for example, a 3D printed concrete model would also drive some cost reduction as well within our business, as well as being a more sustainable outcome.
Thank you, Colin. Next one is from Mark, and it's regarding capturing Scope 3 emissions. Will there be a standardised approach to capturing Scope 3 emissions from contractors across AMP8, or will each water company use their own carbon reporting tool? I'm thinking, Andrew, maybe if you can give some input on this one first, and then again, feel free anybody else to chip in.
Yeah, I think in terms of a standard tool, we don't have one in development across the sector at the moment. We do use a standard accounting workbook for our operational emissions. When it's come to embedded emissions and the sort of the Scope 3 related emissions, we've been generally capturing that and putting it into our own carbon accounting workbooks, but we will follow the standard practices of greenhouse gas accounting practices under the greenhouse gas protocol, or some companies may even be using the ISO 14064 framework. So I think there's probably a conversation going on within the sector. In fact, we have a sort of collaborative network, Underwater UK, and we're actually looking at Scope 3 at the moment and the different practices. So it's a sort of a watching brief. Probably in 6 months' time, we'll be able to come back and say where we're headed next. But I think, yeah, it's a good question, and I think the idea of providing a common approach to be able to collate data. I think we all said that we're going to be data-led, and you know, the sort of the reporting of Scope 3 emissions is going to be very, very important for us. So making that easy and simple is the best thing I think we can do for the supply chain.
Thank you.
To add to that, yeah, thanks, Andrew. I think you've nailed it there. I think we all would really like a standardized approach. I think it would make it a lot easier for everybody if there was one. So we just work for kind of the emission factors that are sort of construction standards emission factors, and then bespoke interface. So the one thing that Severn Trent are trying to do is learn from the data that we get back from completed projects to build back into the tools intelligence. So I understand the frustrations in having lots of different ways in which we calculate that. The outcome is the same for all of us, that we just want quality data, and as much as you can capture that, I think is all that we can ask of you. But we very much acknowledge that we need to hold your hand as we don't have a standardized approach, and accept that sometimes you'll all be in different levels of understanding, and how you can approach that will be different for each of a member of our supply chain. So yeah, just collaboration again, and being open and honest on, if you're finding something difficult, just come and speak to the relevant person in the organisation, and we can try and help you as best as we can with the unstandardized approach to carbon accounting.
Thank you. Just on that as well, don't forget that the Supply Chain School has a huge suite of resources, e-learning modules, guidance documents on how to help calculate carbon footprint as well. So there's some great resources on there, which is obviously free for everyone to access. So that is there as a point of upskilling and knowing what data to collect and how to collect it. The next one is again from Justin. So how will the water companies drive these initiatives with their tier 1 contractors to ensure that any work being done upfront by the water companies is mirrored with the contractors? I'm not sure who to direct this one towards first. So if anyone is willing to take that one on, please feel free to volunteer.
I don't mind from a capital perspective trying that one. Justin, thank you for your question. With us, it's about the forums and the Green Star metrics that enable us to kind of capture the way in which we want you to kind of collaborate with us, our expectations, and the trajectory of targets. And off the back of those, we have an integrated forum, so we enable our supply chain to come forward and have really open and honest conversations with us. And I think that's the best way in which we try and tackle that, but really open to hearing if there's any other ways in which you think it would be more successful to deliver that message.
Can I come in on that one as well? From a United Utilities point of view, we have our responsible sourcing principles that we expect all of our suppliers to sign up to, and this is under our approach, our United Supply Chain approach that Sarah touched on. So as part of that, we ask people to either be a signatory to that United Supply Chain approach or be a leader. And depending on whether you sign up or you feel that you can operate in that leader space, there's different expectations in terms of how you demonstrate that you're sort of delivering our purpose and our values. And those responsible sourcing principles cover environment, social, and elements of governance across that ESG, the 3 themes. So that's probably the key way that we would expect those kind of tier 1 suppliers to be able to align with us in that way.
Thank you. I'm just scrolling through to figure out which is the best one to ask next. We have a question here from Sally. I am interested in any focus on raising knowledge action on embedded water in products and services, and also being clear on the big picture thinking being core to decision making. So unidentified consequences being flagged, such as a wider negative or environmental impact. So anyone have anything to share on embedded water being used in products and services? And is there sort of a strategy or a big picture on that?
I'm happy to have a go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks,
I mean,
Andrew.
obviously, this is embedded water instead of embedded carbon. So obviously, my focus is typically on the carbon side of things. So, but when it comes to embedded water, obviously, I think the classic thing is it's how many liters of water to manufacture a liter of soft drink, let's say, for example. So, I mean, a key for all of the water companies will be on driving down demand. So we'll be working with both domestic customers and commercial industrial customers to help them to look at the intensity of their water use, reduce water demand. The linkage back to the work that we do on carbon and climate adaptation is really critical, isn't it? Because of course, sustainable use of water translates into resilience, translates into lower carbon emissions, and everything is a sort of virtuous circle. So I guess that's a positive engagement. I think probably one of the barriers that we have in a certain sense when we're dealing with commercial customers is the sort of the interrelationship that water companies have, because we are sort of wholesalers, not retailers, to the commercial sector. So the retailers, you know, and there's a, if those are from, you know, in the room are familiar with the sort of the setup of the way that the water sector is regulated, the retailers are third-party companies, and so whilst we're representing the major wholesale companies, the retailers then have that direct interface. So sometimes our interconnect with a customer in the retail sector can be less, you know, it's very indirect in that sort of sense. So there's quite a few complexities, but the drive is for water efficiency and reducing the amount of embedded carbon, thereby, you know, helping everybody get in that virtuous circle.
Thank you, Andrew. I think you answered that quite well there. Anybody else got anything on embodied water that they want to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to touch on the ODI that I did my presentation, which is wholly on embodied carbon. But within one of the aspects of that, we are not allowed to have, as a result of a lower carbon decision, a direct impact on another aspect of environment or social ESG measures. So we wouldn't be able, for example, to choose a product that has high embedded water but a low carbon and say that we've made a saving and an environmental reduced our environmental impact. So it's actually, to use the word, embedded into that ODI, so that we have to demonstrate that that isn't something that we're subconsciously doing in order to reduce carbon.
No, thank you very much on that. Sorry, my questions keep hopping about all over the place. There was a question here. I'm just trying to get a coverage of all the different sustainability topics as well. So there's a question on here from Natalie on, would it be possible to share examples of the modern savoury supply chain risk assessment and question set for audits? I know a few of you touched on modern savoury as a key topic area. So I don't know if anyone wants to delve into sort of that supply chain risk assessment and the audit process a little bit more. I know, Callie, you started quite a bit on modern savoury. Maybe you want to go first.
No problem, I can answer that. So a lot of our water companies work together in the Utilities Against Slavery group, which is a collaborative group, and we're trying to find standardized ways of asking the same sorts of questions, and, you know, looking at potential for sharing information between us and sharing consistent information with our organizations and our supply chains. So in terms of the specific audits that we all conduct, we might have a bit of a variation in the number and type of audits that we do. But for example, with Anglian Water, we conduct desktop audits on the information that our suppliers provide throughout the length of the contract. We're also looking into doing site audits with individuals on site, so having some semi-formal sort of interviews to see the understanding of the risk of modern slavery, what people understand about our whistleblowing policy, for example, the fact that we're sharing information with site operatives and our supply chains as well. So I couldn't give a prescriptive answer in terms of the exact risk assessments that we all do, because we'd have something specific for each company. But anyone who would like to know more about the Anglian Water specific ones, obviously, please do get in touch, because we can share that. And I'm sure that all of the other organisations would also be happy to do that as well. And any resources that we can get through our Utilities Against Slavery group as well.
Great, thanks, Callie. Anyone else have anything to add on modern slavery? Cool. Just conscious of time, I know we have quite a few questions that we haven't managed to answer, and there's some really good ones in there. So what we will do is we'll take those questions and we'll divvy them up amongst the panelists, and we'll get back to you with a response on those questions. And obviously we've all got your names associated with them, so if there's any that we need to reach out personally to clarify on, we can do that. So thanks very much everybody who's asked a question. What we're going to do now is we'll wrap it up. So what we will just go back to the slides. Will, if you're okay to just pop the slides back up.
Oh yeah, do we want the Menti code as well, or the
yeah, so the best thing.
Yeah, I'll get it up, 1 sec.
Great. So if we can get back onto Menti, hoping you all have it still open. Just as we wrap up, thought it would be a good thing to sort of summarise some of the key takeaways for the water companies from this morning's discussion. So before we got into the presentations, we kind of looked at, what the key opportunities and challenges were in achieving sustainability with the water companies. Now what I want us to do is take a look at what some of the key areas in sustainability, now that you've heard from all of the speakers, on that you can support with. So if we can head back over to Menti, Will, if you can just put the Menti up so we can see question. Okay, so thanks, Will. So the first question is, based on what you've heard already, where do you think you can support the water industry in meeting their sustainability objectives? So select as many that apply to you. And what we really want to do is get a feel of, which topics do you really think you can help deliver some meaningful impact with the water companies. So we have climate and carbon, water, quite a lot across the board, but big focus on that carbon element. And I saw quite a lot of questions in the Q&A on sort of different product solutions which have lower emissions within the products. So that's a very good link there with them. So climate, carbon and water are probably the two leaders there, with the others sort of steady away in the background. I'll leave that open for a little bit longer just so people can keep responding to the question. Yes, I don't think the numbers are going up much anymore. So we'll get on to the next one. Will, if you can just get on to the next question. And then finally, can you rank the sustainability topics in the order that you would need most support on? So this is an interesting one for the supply chain school. Where can we offer you more support? But also for the water organisations, in what is it that they need to really hone in on and support in their supply chain with? So social value. Yeah, climate seems to be winning the race between climate and social value. Okay, so we'll leave that running in the background, but interesting to see that climate, carbon and adaptation seem to be sort of the leaders up there with social value quite closely following behind. So we'll leave that just running in the background. Keep submitting your ranking information on there. Will, can you just switch over now to the slides again, and we'll do a bit of a wrap up. So just wanting to draw everyone's attention to another virtual conference that's coming up next week, where you can hear from Savills, Prolectric and Canary Wharf Group on the different benefits of using digital across the building sector. So again, scan the QR code or head to the Supply Chain School website to register. And then finally, it would be really good to get your feedback. We run quite a few of these sessions, and we're obviously preparing for the next financial year. So your feedback really helps us tailor these sessions and do them better moving forward. So there'll be a form shared at the end of this, or again, feel free to scan the QR code and provide us with your feedback. But I want to just give a big final thanks to all of the panelists and speakers this morning. It was really, really great to hear from you all. Really great to hear what's coming up, and exciting to see what can be achieved in the next AMP8, which is coming right now. So yeah, thank you very much, everybody. Thanks all participants for your time this morning. We hope you found it really insightful, and have a really good rest of your Wednesday. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks.